So this past Friday was a difficult day. I've been going around saying spring has sprung the past few days, and we've had some decent weather actually for at least some of this period when everything has been closed and canceled. But Friday, like yesterday and today, I predict, was gray and windy and cold. Our little family was cooped up in the house for the entire day. There was lots of screen time for Owen to try to keep him somewhat occupied, and then he didn't have a nap, so by dinner last night before bed, Owen just lost it. He had a Category 5 uncontrollable tantrum. I don't really even know what set him off, to be honest, but it was an epic 3-year-old meltdown that went on for at least an hour. Kicking, screaming, crying. There was just nothing that we could do to soothe him or put an end to it. And my wife, Kathy, tells me that that's okay. In some sense, at least, these tantrums are healthy. Or at least it's healthy for us not to try to stifle or silence it. Because having all those big, powerful feelings is okay. And he needs to know that here in this house with his family, he's safe to express those feelings. So we let him have the tantrum. Let him scream and sob through bath time and through brushing teeth. Helped him change his pajamas 3 times because evidently that was like a life or death issue for him. And we took turns holding him and hugging him and telling him that we love him. It was all very exhausting. And as I sat there at the end of it, basically as he cried himself to sleep, I tried to imagine what was going on inside his little 3-year-old brain. What was behind those big tears that rolled down his cheeks and off his ears and onto my lap. Rage, fear, anger, frustration, sadness. I'm no child psychologist, but I think some family systems theorists would say that it was probably an expression of the cumulative anxiety, stress, and tension that has been building up recently in his emotional field, in his family system. For 2 weeks straight now, or has it been 3 weeks, or 5 months? Not only has Owen been separated from his friends, teachers, and caregivers at school, and had a new routine with very little change in setting, and a canceled trip to go on an airplane to see his grandparents, but he's also been passed back and forth between 2 very stressed out parents. 2 parents who, after years of practicing good boundaries and trying not to bring office work home, now suddenly have to figure out how to do all their work from home. 2 parents who are both pastors of 2 anxious congregations, being forced to learn on the fly how to worship and care for and be present with one another when being present with each other carries the risk of literally killing or seriously infecting the most vulnerable people who probably need that presence and connection the most. 2 parents who are dealing with all of this during the busiest, holiest time of the year for churches and two parents who, by the way, are also parenting his 3-month-old baby brother, who evidently has a few needs that must be met as well. You might be able to hear Owen now. So as Owen laid there in his inconsolable anger, sadness, and exhaustion, I started to feel a little bit of jealousy that was mixed with guilt, because I realized Owen was crying the tears that I should be crying, the tears that I desperately wanted to be crying. There he was on my lap with all the emotion that I knew was within me, but I wasn't somehow able to access. Owen's tears were for the spring break vacation that we didn't get to have. His tears were for my missed trip to Florida for my friend's oceanside wedding, which still hasn't been rescheduled. They were for the smell of the Easter lilies and the sound of the brass and the taste of brunch with family and friends next weekend. The tears were for my scheduled time off and home visits. They were for communion. They were for live music and movies and theater. They were for parties and festivals and carnivals. They were for the missed hugs and the fruitless trips to the grocery store. They were for the Olympians whose dreams have been deferred, and for the restaurateurs and the small business owners. They were for our musical Good Friday Tenebrae service, which we've had to postpone for at least 6 weeks. And finally, those tears were for our Palm Sunday worship plans, which had called for us to begin this service outside the church, underneath the oak trees, gathered as we sung and danced and waved palm branches to our neighbors, while the organ blasted through the open doors and we processed up the steps into the sanctuary. As you can see, those plans have been slightly altered. Instead of celebrating Palm Sunday today, we are observing Palm and Passion Sunday. We began worship with the story of Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem, where he's surrounded by adoring fans crowded shoulder to shoulder for an impromptu parade. They shout together, "Hosanna," which means "save us now," and treat him like a king. But what we're focusing more on this morning is the story of Christ's passion, where they instead cry, "Crucify him." And to describe him as being socially distant from his followers would be an understatement, while he hangs alone on the cross, having been abandoned by even his closest, most faithful friends. Indeed, from Jesus' perspective at least, crucifixion has even quarantined him away from God. One translation of Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani is, my God, why have you abandoned me?" As American Christians, my God, why have you abandoned me?" is not a spiritual road most of us allow ourselves to go down. Not really. Unlike toddlers of any country or culture, as Owen is proof of. One reason for that is that we American Christians know we have things pretty good. So it seems just slightly heretical to compare Jesus' anguish and lament in his final breaths from the cross to the tantrum of an overtired 3-year-old, or the frustration of working professionals who are forced to spend multiple weeks with their families, unable to leave their middle-class homes with their climate controls and high-speed internet connections, forced to order delivery instead of going out for dinner. First world problems, as they say. Another reason that anger with God or denial of God's presence lies outside our religious repertoire is that we know how this story of Jesus ends. And so we trust that no suffering is without redemption. No crucifixion is without resurrection. And so to declare that God has abandoned us and to deny that there's any divine plan lying behind our pain is to declare that we know better than God, which is obviously a big no-no. But rather than raising a shout of victory or singing a psalm of praise, saying the words, my God, why have you abandoned me?" as Jesus was executed, alone and afraid, was, I think, the most reverent, faithful act of his ministry. My God, why have you abandoned me?" was the truest sermon that Christ ever preached. Because think about it, to always declare that this too will pass, or that it will get better, or that all things work together for good if you love God, or that Easter morning is just around the corner, is to deny the full truth of the gospel and to shortchange the full hope of our faith. Because for some who hurt, especially in the moment of greatest loss, nothing can ease the pain. For all too many, what doesn't kill them doesn't make them stronger. It just leaves them terrified and traumatized. And just as Jesus' loving Father, like any loving father, could not take away his pain, there are moments in which the only hope the gospel can offer us when we hurt is not the promise that it will get better, but that we are not alone, that Christ hurts with you. Yes, the ultimate good news of Christ's suffering and death is that when we hurt, Jesus does not remind us how blessed we are because some people have it worse. Because of the cross, when we hurt, Jesus will not tell us to just put on a happy face or suck it up or walk it off. When we hurt, Jesus will never give us false hope that it will all be over soon. When we hurt, Jesus will not be scandalized if we curse God or give up faith. When we hurt, Jesus will not tell us that for some stupid reason it was all part of God's plan all along. No, because of the cross, when we hurt, we can be assured that we do not hurt alone. Paradoxically, when we ask, my God, why have you abandoned me? Jesus, the Christ, asks it with us, encourages it, even curses with us, doubts with us, tells us over and over again, I love you. Friends, it's hard right now. For some, it may get better. For some, there may indeed be something to be learned or gained. And for others, maybe it won't. Maybe there isn't. But for all, whether your light shines brightly, or has grown faint, or has even gone out, this much I know. You are not alone. You are deeply loved.